You just got your first buyer client, or maybe you've had a few and you've always sort of floundered. You've never really known what to do. Well, this video is for you. We're talking, what should you do? How do you best help, and how do you sort of best bring into the fold a new buyer client? Let's hit it. How's it going, friends? Welcome to this show. I'm calling it Showstoppers. Is it a podcast? Is it a YouTube show? I don't know. This channel is for brand new agents, experienced agents, everything in between, who basically are trying to shake shit up a little bit, do things differently, and maybe just learn different perspectives or learn how to absolutely crush it doing something different than what the status quo tells you to do. If any of that sounds appealing to you, then do me a favor, subscribe to this channel, click the bell to get notified so you can see when I put these videos out. I will continue to put these videos out as long as they are remotely helpful to anybody at all, which I think they will be indefinitely. So subscribe, and if you have any interest in working with me directly, you can just shoot me an email to info@tothetwincities.com, whether that's as a client, as another agent on my team here in the Twin City, in Denver, in Salt Lake City, in San Diego, in Nashville, or anywhere else in the country, or really even the world. If there's a way that we can make this work, there's a way that the marketing that I've been able to do to grow my business and absolutely blow my mind, if I'm being honest, then I would love to work with you. And if you want to come on board this team or just join Real, which is the brokerage I'm at, that I think is doing a really, really great job, get a hold of me, info@tothetwincities.com, or there should be a form down in the description. That should be a link that should bring you to signing up for Real if that's what you're trying to do. But it's all good. I think that's one of the beautiful things about real estate is that you can, as long as you have the client's best interest, as long as you are trying to do the right thing, you can learn as you go, and as long as you are humble enough to know when you don't know what you don't know, then you really can get to a place where you can absolutely crush it. You can fail forward, and depending on if you've never had a client before, or maybe you just got your first client and you're absolutely panicked because you don't know what to do, it's all good. I'm gonna talk you through basically how your first interaction, whether that's in person or on Zoom, depending on how that client reached out to you, if they're in your city or whatever. Honestly, if they're your first buyer client ever, there's a really good chance that they're already in your city. So let's go forward, assuming that they are somebody who you know, who saw something you put on social media or something like that, and they are now interested in working with you as a buyer's agent. They want to buy a house, and maybe you don't really either, but fear not, this video is for you. This video will help you have the confidence to proceed and make sure that you're doing things right and absolutely crushing it for these clients. I'm based in Minnesota and I'm licensed in Minnesota, so some of maybe the laws are going to be more specific to Minnesota, but I believe that the fundamentals here will help anybody, anywhere around the country, anywhere around, I don't know, the planet probably. So they reach out to you, they say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house. Would you be willing to help? And you probably text back and you're like, my God, yes, I would absolutely love to. I'll drop what I'm doing right now and I will come meet you in 30 seconds if you need me to. But as eager as you are and as excited as you are about the opportunity, you gotta be careful. Don't make it come across as you're eager to have a closing and you're eager to make the money. You're eager to help the person that will lead to money. So be eager about that. Be excited for them. Don't be excited at all for yourself. So you're gonna schedule a time to meet up with them. That could be at your brokerage. I think a neutral zone of like a coffee shop is a really, really great idea. I go to Starbucks a lot of the time with our clients, and not because I think Starbucks is the coolest place, but because it's a neutral territory. I'm not saying, hey, come to this cool, we have Spy House. I like going to Spy House with clients if I think that maybe they want to have a cool experience, kind of a unique Minnesotan experience. But for folks who maybe already live here, who are just trying to meet up with me, I'll very often say, is there a Starbucks nearby you that would be good to meet up at? That's a line that you can steal, and I think it really will work very often. And if they're like, no, but there's a Caribou we like going to, great, right? Caribou, Pete's, I don't know, there's all sorts of things that are like that. But if they're like, no, but there's this close to us, cool, that's great. That maybe feels like home to them. So let's say you decide on, okay, let's do Thursday at 7 p.m. at this Caribou nearby. Cool. Gotta put that in your calendar. As a real estate agent, you have to at least, even if you're not busy and you're like I'm going to forget Thursday at 7 for my first client ever, I'm going to be thinking about it every day up until then. I'm going to make one of those advent calendars or one of those, remember the chain things back in Christmas time? No, whatever. But you got to put that in the calendar, and the main reason that you have to put that in your calendar is because you need to begin forming those good habits, those calendaring habits, because if you are lazy, if you are laissez-faire about your scheduling, you will mess up. And your goal should be to help as many clients as possible, hard stop. So messing up and losing a client means that goal is further away, or it's less realized than it probably could have been. I use an iPhone. I don't care what you use. A lot of people like to use like Google Calendar. I don't know. I hate looking at it. It looks funny to me. I'm very used to iCalendar. But what I like to do in iCalendar is set 2 reminders. Obviously, here it is in my calendar. It starts at 7 o'clock on Thursday. I like to do a 1 hour and a 2 hour warning for that thing. If something is really far out, let's say something's a month out, then I like to do a 1 week notice and a 2 day notice. And I have to make sure that when I see the 1 month notice, that reminds me, that is coming up, and I also need to change this reminder to a 2 day notice and a 2 hour notice. I know that's like a little complicated or a little seems unnecessary, but you need to remind yourself for these things. And if once you're busy, you will not remember that you have a meeting in a month from now, right? So you're gonna say in a week, oh, this thing is coming up, and you'll say, aha, right, all right, now I remember that. You'll change that, so then you now have 2 reminders much closer to the actual date that it's going to happen. I think making sure that you have backups in place, making sure that you have as many reminders possible to you for really important events like client meetings, I think that is one of the most important habits that you can begin to develop as a new agent. And depending on how far out it is, if it's like the next day or the same day especially, I would say this doesn't matter quite as much. But if you can send out a reminder within 24, 36 hours on the high end, and you can say, hey, I just want to remind you that we have this meeting scheduled for this time. If anything changed and that doesn't work for you, let me know. No problem, we can reschedule. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you then. And more than likely, if you're doing everything right on social media and these people are coming into you because they like you, they'll say, absolutely, looking forward to it. And then you can pretty well rest assured that you will not get ghosted. I've been ghosted on a few Zoom calls in my day because that's a kind of a lower touch thing, but I really have not ever been ghosted at a physical in-person meeting, knock on wood. Now is the time for the actual meeting. First things first, get there early if you can, and you can. If this is your first client, you can get there early. Make sure you're there early. Once you're really busy, maybe it can get a little harder to get there early for things, but it is important to try to be early for a few reasons. Number one is that there's a good chance that you don't know what they look like, but they know what you look like. If they found you on social media because you're crushing the game, then there's a good chance that they know what you look like, and you have no idea who they are. So I find that it's nice to get there early and try to find a spot that is relatively visible from the entryway, right? Don't tuck yourself around in a corner. Otherwise, you might have an awkward situation where they've sat around another corner and y'all are both waiting for each other, and you don't want to be rude or text and say like, hey, you're showing up, and then, yeah. Maybe that's happened to me once, but I promise I try to be relatively visible in the room so that they can say, aha, that is clearly the person that I'm here to meet. Now, there is a chance that you show up early and they showed up even earlier than you. It's all good. When you walk in, be prepared to potentially meet the actual people that you're there to meet. So you'll walk in the door, maybe they're there, or maybe you'll order a drink, sit down, and then they'll walk in. When they acknowledge you, do me a favor, stand up and say hi. Shake their hand, nice firm handshake. Practice that with somebody if you have to. I'm not necessarily like really crazy about like, oh, you gotta give them like the firmest handshake, a firmer handshake than them. I don't really agree with that. Just a firm, confident handshake. I promise you'll get better at those over time. So just practice it a little bit with friends. And when it goes in for the handshake, give them a handshake. Hey, very nice to meet you. And if you haven't already, right now, I'd like you to start taking notes. It can be on your phone, it can be on paper, iPad, whatever. I want you to have a format to some degree of what is this meeting? What are we talking about? Okay. You don't just want to show up and be like, so you guys want to buy a house? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, cool, right? You definitely want to be running the show. And that's true of a seller appointment. You want to know that you've done it or that you have an idea of how this should go so that you can walk those people through it. And if you want to practice this, you could practice this whole meeting with somebody else if you have somebody else in your life who's willing to do something like that with you. If you're looking for people to maybe run those things by, leave a comment, make some friends in the comments, and hopefully somebody else will be down to do that with you because maybe you're both brand new and you could use a little bit of practice. So the first thing, again, write this down. The first thing that I want you to do is clarify their names. Unless their names are blatantly obvious and it's like one person, sometimes what happens though is somebody says, hey Joe, my name is Tom. My girlfriend and I are thinking about buying a house. Could I meet with you to talk about that? And you'll say, yeah, absolutely, Tom or Joe or whatever it was. I'd love to meet with you. And then when you sit down, you'll say, hey, very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. You'll never ask the girlfriend's name, and 30 minutes in, you'll be panicked because you don't know her name, right? And then you'll have to just hope that the rest of the meeting goes by and you can say, can I get your email address? And then she'll say, yeah, it's Kate Johnson at whatever. And you're like, thank Christ, she told me her name. So first things first, just ask them to clarify their name. Hey, Jim, you go by Jim, right? It's not like James or anything like that. And then actually, I didn't catch your name. What was your name again? And then, oh yeah, my name's Kate. Okay, very good. And then you can type into your thing or write on your thing, Kate and Jim or James or whatever, Jimbo. And then, cool, now you have that and you can refer back to it 45 minutes into the conversation because you have it written down and you don't have to remember. I think one of the best and easiest ways to begin the conversation is say, thanks so much for reaching out and for asking me to meet up. I'm curious what's your current living situation like, right? And do me a favor, try not to ask it really scripted. Try not to be like, hey, yeah, thank you for meeting with me. Please tell me, what is your current living situation like? Okay, you know what I mean? Try to be like, okay, living situation. I think on your note, just say, number one, names, parenthesis, colon, and then a space. Number two should be current living situation, colon. So then you can see that and say, okay, current living situation. Can you tell me what's your current living situation? Are you renting? Do you already own a home? Or are maybe you living with parents or something like that? And they'll be like, oh yeah, we're doing this. And okay, cool. Then you can begin to form their timeline, right? That is all going toward that notion. It's not just because you're curious where they live. You want to know, what is their timeline looking like? What are things that are potentially in the way? So the big thing, if they are not providing this, freely, one, do they own a home already? Maybe you know that, maybe you don't. If they do own a home and they're trying to buy a new home, congratulations, potentially you can double side this and you can help them sell their home and help them buy a new home. That's awesome. That's so exciting, and that's a great place to be. But there's also a very good chance that they don't own a home already, right? So if they're renting, they're likely in a lease of some sort. So you could say, what's your lease situation like? Are you in a month to month? Is there an expiration on that lease? Can you go month to month after that lease? Because you want to know as many details about previous to when the lease ends, to when the lease ends, and or how long after that can they go comfortably with, if they don't have a home by that point. Because what you want to do is work backward from when they have to be out of a house, right? And now there is a definite possibility that these people are living with their parents or living with friends or somehow have some situation that has no pressing time at all. One thing, as always, don't have commission breath. Don't try to push it forward. It will happen sooner if you make them comfortable and say, it's all good, I'm on your timeline. Whenever it works for you, I'm here, I'm ready to make a move. So the question that we're trying to get, and you can write this down, again, ask their names, ask what their current living situation is, and then ask what is their timeline, right? But that timeline, you might want to massage out a little bit. If you say, do you have an idea of when you're hoping to be in a home? They might give you a range. That's cool. Now what I want you to do, based on that range, say, great, is there a time that would feel too soon for you to buy, right? Too soon for you to move or whatever. Very often people are like, yes, and it's this date for whatever reason, right? Maybe school, maybe kids, whatever, something like that. And then on the other end, I want you to ask, is there a time that would feel too late for you to buy the home? Some people are going to say no there, depending on their situation. I think the reality is if they say no, you could say, okay, so if it's in a year, that's no big deal. And they might say like, no, I guess I would hope for before the end of the year. Cool, you're getting somewhere, right? People haven't always thought through these things, and that's where you come in. And ultimately, you'll be able to help them come to conclusions that they didn't even know that they had to. And now I have videos on my personal channels. You can literally go to the Twin Cities and type in, how long does it take to buy a home, or home buying timeline, and I have a video that sort of spells that out, like what is the process start to finish from when you are even considering buying a home to when you've closed on a home, how long does that take? And you can copy those ideas, and fundamentally what you're doing is working backward from a desired closing date or a window of a closing date, and then you work backward based on closing date of this, how long for escrow, right? So from when they're under contract to when they close, okay, then approximately how long for the house search, 2, 3 months, a week, how long is that gonna take? And you wanna build in some buffer, and then how long to get the pre-approval, and ultimately you can shape when is their sweet spot to begin looking, when would be too early for them to put something under contract, and then what would be too late depending on what that window they provide for you is. Okay, ask names, what's your current situation, what's your timeline to buy, and then the fourth thing basically is, have you spoken with the lender yet? And if you are doing everything right, attracting clients, there's a really good chance that they haven't talked to anybody yet, because you're sort of their foray into this, and they're like, I like this guy. Maybe they just considered thinking about it, or maybe your conversation, maybe a video you made, maybe a post you made had sort of convinced them that maybe this is something I want to think about. And so they reach out to you. They don't have a lender yet, but I want you to ask, have you spoken with the lender yet? There's a chance they have. There's a chance that they've used some online lender, and they're like, yeah, we filled out a qualification thing with whatever, probably obvious, online lender. And what I want you to do is say, okay, cool. That's like, I don't want you to say like, whoa, don't, no. These online lenders suck. As true as that may be, you don't want to make them feel stupid. And the reality is, like, they can, those lenders can close loans. So it's possible that they're like, well, this is who I'm comfortable with, and that's okay, right? Even if you have a preferred lender, which you should, right? You should have a preferred lender, but early on, your preferred lender might just be a referral from somebody else, at which point I would say what you're gonna really wanna do is provide 3 potential lenders for them to reach out to. And more than that, I would say you should connect them over email with those lenders. You should begin building that relationship with that lender by saying, hey, so-and-so, I want you to meet this lender, so-and-so. I'll connect you and y'all can take it from here. And you can do that 3 times, right? If you don't have a particular lender you love, connect them with 3 people and let them decide who they want to work with. I have a lender who I absolutely love to work with. I connect people with him, and then I give 2 other names, right? Because I'm much looser on the other 2, because I have a really, really great relationship with the one. He has done tremendous work for me, and the other 2, I'm not sure at this point that I'm willing to affect my reputation on them, because I haven't used them enough to really know that they're going to crush it for this client. So ask if they have a lender. If they've already talked with one, what I want you to do is say, oh, that's really cool. I do think that there are benefits to using somebody who we can actually have a relationship with, who maybe is local, or who at least I know will do a really good job. A line that I like to use with a lot of clients, which is, it's true, it's literally like just something that I've said before, and I was like, oh yeah, that's true, and that's a really effective way to communicate it, is I really trust this guy. He's been a wealth of knowledge to me up until this point, and I love that I can text him at 9:30 on a Sunday night. I can text him at 7 p.m. on a Friday night, and he will get back to me. A lot of online banks, that is not the case, and real estate is done on the weekends, whether you like it or not. Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday mornings are the most common times to do showings, which happens to be when banks and these online lenders are most difficult to get a hold of, which is very often when you'll need a pre-approval. So you're gonna wanna talk them through, here's the benefit of using an actual mortgage lender who's like actually a real person, and they're just not a name on a spreadsheet for them. And there are real reasons to that. You're not selling them, you're not convincing them to do something that is not in their best interest. The reality is that using a lender who is competent, who's doing this regularly, will genuinely improve not just their experience, but their likelihood of getting the house that they actually want. And now, if they haven't talked to a lender, they haven't even gone through a pre-qualification, I think the next question that you should ask is, okay, like I know you haven't spoken with the lender yet. Do you have any idea of what you're hoping to afford, right? And maybe they're like, well, we know what we want to stay at monthly, okay? What I want you to do is, and this won't be financial advice, I want you to say, hey, this isn't financial advice, but we're going to use a mortgage calculator to come up with a rough idea so we can continue this conversation and work through with hypothetical numbers that are somewhat based in reality as far as what you want to be paying on a monthly basis. And so let's say that they say, we'd like to be staying under $2,000 a month. Okay, I want you to pull out a mortgage calculator. In Minnesota, we use a home search app called HomeSpotter. It's actually tied to our MLS. It's better than Zillow and Redfin and Realtor. But the reality is, if you want to use Realtor.com and use their mortgage calculator, as long as you have an idea of how that works, which by the way, if you don't, I want you to make a note that says, learn how a mortgage calculator works, because I want you to go into this having an idea of how to calculate some of these numbers. But again, I want you to upfront, hey, I'm not a lender. I like to say, even though I actually did get licensed as a loan officer once, I like to say I have like a 5th grade understanding of financing. It's not very good. And the lender I'm referring you, he's basically a PhD. But we'll be able to come up with some general numbers, and we'll be able to begin to work through some of this stuff in a hypothetical situation. So you pull out your mortgage calculator, you'll say, okay, at this purchase price, do you have an idea of how much you'd want to put down? They might say 0% if they're using down payment assistance. That would get a little bit weird, but go to 0%. They might say 3%, 3.5%. They might say 20%, right? Do a rough calculation on those things and figure out approximately what the purchase price would be to stay under that dollar amount. So now you've determined a fake maximum budget, right? And again, some people already have an idea in mind because maybe they've run some of those calculations and they're like, all right, we think we want to stay between 300 and 350,000. Okay, all good. Now just write that down, maximum budget, and then I want you to write down the following sort of criteria, okay? One should be location, right? And leave a bunch of space under that, so then maybe you can type in notes as they're talking. Now I want you to say bedrooms, bathrooms, garage/parking, depending on where you live, minimum square footage, nice to haves, deal breakers. Okay, and now as you're talking to them, I want you to go through those. And the way that we like to say it is, what is the minimum number of bedrooms that you would even consider? If the home is perfect but has 2 bedrooms, would you consider that, right? So minimum number of blank that you would even consider, right? And I want you to say that for bathrooms, minimum number of bathrooms that you would even consider. Is a garage stall a requirement? Yes or no? Is off-street parking a requirement? Yes or no? If a garage stall is required, how many parking stalls? 1, 2, 3, 16, And then with the minimum square footage, one thing that I will say is a lot of first-time home buyers don't really have a concept of what that means. So you can say like, do you have an idea of what a minimum square footage that you would consider would be? Sometimes they'll just say, no, it's all good, just leave it open. Be like, look, I'd rather go show you a house that we decide is too small than have you not see a home that is perfect for you because we set some criteria that you don't have a full understanding of. And then for the nice to haves, that's just like taking notes. That's just listening, like, okay, cool, that's great. You're not necessarily going to filter through homes that have the nice to haves because maybe they don't need those things, right? And same with the deal breakers. Honestly, a lot of the deal breakers you can't really filter for that effectively, at least on Minnesota's MLS. So what we like to tell people is, I hear you on the deal breakers, and we'll try really hard to pay attention to that so we're not wasting your time looking at anything that maybe has some of those deal breakers, but I won't necessarily be able to filter for that in the MLS. So you might be seeing some homes that have some of these deal breakers, and it's all good. I promise that's not me sending you things that you're not interested in. That's an automated search. And if I were to filter for some of this criteria, then we're relying on other agents entering all the information correctly, which they don't always do. So again, I would rather you see a few homes in your email that aren't necessarily that interesting to you than miss out on a home that's perfect because somebody entered some little information wrong. And now, if it's possible, as you're talking through some of these things, I want you to begin to set up a search, right? I want you to be able to talk with them, interactively show them, okay, we have 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, that's a really weird setup, and a 16-car garage. Here's how many homes come up on the list. 0, probably, at least here. And then I want the next question to be, have you narrowed down location at all? Do you have an idea of where you hope that this home is? By the way, let me go back one. In the general home search, the bedrooms, bathroom, garage stall, at the top I want you to say single family home, condo, townhome, anything else, multifamily home, and then, talk through that at the beginning. Are you thinking only single family home? Are you open to a townhome? Are you more actually thinking about a condo, right? So talk through that. Now again, back to where we were. Have you narrowed down location at all? And as they're talking about location, I want you to take notes, but I also want you to be, beginning to open up the search and checking out the map. And in Minnesota, at least on our MLS, we can carve out maps very specifically based on what somebody is telling us. Now, there's a chance that somebody says, honestly, we're considering this whole area, right? Which is maybe too many potential listings for them to see. So I think then I want you to say, I think it's probably in your best interest if we begin to narrow some of that down a little bit, right? And I think you could then say, let me flip it this way. Are there any areas that you are not interested in? And between those 2 questions, most people do have some ideas. In Minnesota, some people will be like, well, sure, we want it to be south of 94 or south of the river. And you're like, well, okay, that removes a ton of the market. But some people are just thinking like, well, no, we're considering mostly everything. And then you're like, okay, where? And they're like, honestly, just this pretty small area. So are there any areas that that you're particularly interested in, or are there any areas that you're not interested in? Depending on somebody's price range too, sometimes if they're like, oh, I don't want this area or this area, if they can't afford above a certain threshold, they might not see very many homes at all, right? But it's helpful either way to help them narrow down to show what's realistic. Again, I'm sure you know this because you probably passed realtor school, but don't steer, right? Any protected class, you're not talking about those things. An area is not good for any type of person, right? That is not something you want to do. You want to make sure that, if anything, what is the lifestyle? Do you want to be close to parks? Okay, a park isn't a protected class. That's great, right? Do you want to be close to the river? Do you want a suburban lifestyle? Do you want to live in the city? Do you want to live in downtown? Those are not protected classes, right? And one thing I really want you to do, as this is your first client, is do not project any of your own opinions onto these people, right? The reality is, people have different tastes than you. Whoever you are, somebody you help will have very different taste from you. And if you say that you feel one way specifically about an area, negatively, and that's an area that they're targeting, now why do they trust you? Why would they even like you? You're saying that their opinion on a place where they want to live isn't good, right? So just try to remove your own opinion, try to remove your own ego from the conversation. But honestly, hopefully you can have a good conversation about where they want to be, where they don't want to be, and you can carve out the lines. Often it's geographic. It's let's stop it at that highway, or let's stop it at that river, or coastline or whatever, and then go all the way over there. And most people have an idea of where they want to be. And you can narrow that in, kind of cut out some of the noise so they're mostly seeing the stuff that they're actually interested in. And then I want you to set up that home search, okay? I want you to send it to their emails or individual email, depending on how many people are involved. And then I want you to set up a text with that person or a group text, right? Maybe you already have a text, but maybe they DM'd you on Instagram, right? Or they hit you up through email. I want you to set up a text and say, this is how we can communicate from now on to make it as quick as possible. If you send me an email, it might take me a little bit longer to respond than if you send me a text, because it's just a slower moving communication type. In the same way that a telegraph would take longer than a phone call, right? When you set up that group text, one thing we like to do is send our home search, platform. So maybe your brokerage has one, maybe the area you're in, like we have HomeSpotter, maybe that's in your area. Send that to them, say, this is what you should be using now instead of Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, anything like that. And I like to tell people, and look, now we're connected over text, and I promise you, it should be as simple as if you find a home that you like in the email or on HomeSpotter or whatever, a friend sends it to you. Send me over a link, an address, or an MLS number and say, hey, I'd like to see this. And then we can coordinate when works for you, when works for me, and we'll go check it out. And then at the end of that meeting, I want you to say, do you have any questions? Is there anything that I missed? Anything like that. Obviously, if they have any questions, you're going to answer that. One of the questions might be, do I have to sign any contract with you? That's up to you to decide. Personally, we actually don't do that. We don't make people sign contracts on first meeting with us. We generally say, we'll show you homes, and until the time comes to where you're writing an offer, then we're going to need a contract so that we can properly represent you. There are certain disclosures that you're supposed to give out, so definitely do anything that you're supposed to within the law, like an agency disclosure or anything like that. But if you want to put those folks under contract as your client, feel free. It's not my place to tell you how to do that. I like to say, look, in Minnesota, the reality is if you didn't like working with me, you could just fire me anyway. And so I'm not going to pretend to lock you into some contract. I'm going to work my butt off and show you that there's no reason to work with anybody else but me, because I will kill it for you. And then, again, shake hands. Hey, so good to meet you. Now you remember the name because you asked at the beginning. And then go your separate ways. And then I want you to play it cool, okay? I want you to connect them with the lender that you did. I want you to follow up with the lender. Hey, have these people reached out to you, right? Are you working on anything with these people? Are you meeting with these people? I truly believe that you can hound a lender better and easier than you can hound a client. Clients don't want to be bugged, right? If you're pushy, if you're too eager, it's commission breath. The people are going to sense it, so don't do that. Follow up with the lender. Hey, have you chatted with these people? And they'll say, yeah, actually we're meeting on this day, or we're having a phone call on this day. I should have a pre-approval by this time. Sick. Please let me know when you have a pre-approval. Follow up a little bit later. If they said that they'd have a pre-approval by that time, follow up with the lender. Hey, just wanted to follow up. Did you get a pre-approval going for them? If they did, cool. Hey, what's the top price? This, but maybe we talked that they really want to keep it under this price. Awesome. Now at that point, I want you to follow up with the clients and say, hey, I just talked to so-and-so. Really cool news that you have the pre-approval all set up. Congrats on that. I know I said this already, but now that you have the pre-approval, anytime you want to look at a home, anytime you find anything even remotely compelling, send me a link, send me an MLS number, send me an address, and we can go check it out. And they should be like, great, and maybe there'll be some follow-up of when they think that it'll happen, or when they think that they'll begin looking, or something like that. But I genuinely, in my heart of hearts, think that you shouldn't be following up with them unnecessarily. Hey, just wanted to check in. Dude, everybody knows what that email means. Hey, just wanted to make sure that you're still thinking you're going to work with me, right? So you can follow up in ways that are organic, like I would say in regards to the pre-approval. Even if the pre-approval, he says, they're not actually good to go, they probably have 6 months to go. Then follow up then. Hey, just talk with the lender. He said that there's maybe some time that you have to do some stuff. All good. I just want you to know that I'll be here whenever you're ready. Cool. All right, cool. And then follow up. Hey, cool. Heard you got the pre-approval. Great. Follow up when it actually makes sense. I really believe that. And especially for most first-time home buyers, most clients who are going to be a first client of somebody probably just don't want to be bugged, right? They don't want to be pressured into that. That's my own personal belief. You can do your business how you want, but I hope that this video has been helpful. As always, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to get notified so you can see when we put these videos out. Give the video a thumbs up, say what's up in the comments. Can you tell I'm sweaty? I'm a little bit sweaty. I got the window unit off in here so that the audio is a little bit better. Appreciate y'all. See ya. Bye-bye.